To introduce our next speaker, Rais Bhuiyan, I'm so honored to have our congressman in our district, Congressman Adam Schiff, who has been a good friend of the American Muslim community and really took the time. He could have spent Saturday. He just got home from Washington after a long session, but he's here to be with us to introduce Rais Bhuiyan. So with that, Congressman Adam Schiff.
Well, good evening, and thank you. It's a pleasure to join you this evening and celebrate at MPEC's 14th annual convention. Salam and I go back a long way. I remember the Salam, that young Salam that we just saw in the video a few minutes ago. As a state senator and a member of the House, I've worked with MPEC for many years now, as well as the broader Muslim community here in Southern California, to improve relations between the faiths, to promote tolerance, understanding, and equality. That is a mission that you began before September 11th, and it is one that has taken on even greater significance in the years since. Even now, 13 years after the horrors of 9/11, American Muslims are still the victims of random violence and discrimination because of their faith. Last Sunday, a Seattle man beat a Somali-American cab driver while calling him a terrorist and asking him if he was a member of ISIS. Here in California, mosques in Santa Cruz and San Diego were vandalized in October and November, and a shooting took place at a mosque in Coachella on November 4th. Thankfully, no one was injured. While these acts of violence may be directed at Muslims, they wound all of us, and each of us has a duty to respond, and forcefully. Like many in this room, I've repeatedly spoken out against hate and will continue to do so. Bigotry, in whatever form, has no place in our country. America deserves better. One of the distinguishing features of American experience has been the degree to which religious and ethnic communities have been integrated into our society and rejected the perverse lure of violence. This is due, I'm sure, to a number of factors, including the separation of church and state in America, our history of embracing religious pluralism, and the degree to which Americans have cherished an identity of being the great melting pot. And is also due to groups such as Impact, which have worked tirelessly to combat prejudice and prevent young people from drifting into dangerous radicalism. But America must not become complacent about the threats to its youth after more than a decade of war, and given new and sophisticated propaganda campaigns by groups like ISIS. As some Americans lose touch with their communities and society, they have fallen prey to ISIS recruiters who have tried to lure them to Syria. This is what happened to 3 Colorado teenage girls earlier this fall, who got as far as Frankfurt, Germany, before they were intercepted and returned to their families. And this is where bigotry has the potential to harm all of us, since prejudice can drive impressionable teens into the arms of jihadis. While a small number of Americans have joined ISIS, many hundreds of Europeans, French, British, and Russian among them, have flocked to the Black Banner. As a member of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, I can tell you that what happens when they return to their home countries is the stuff of nightmares for Western security officials and European Muslim community leaders. None of us want that for our kids or for our country. That is why we must redouble our efforts to fight hatred here at home, even as we work hard with regional partners to defeat ISIS abroad. And if we're to confront hate, if we're to see the true spirit of all the great faiths like Islam, and if we're to forge a new community of all of God's children here and around the world, I can think of no better person to lead that effort than Rais Bhuiyan. Rais was born in Bangladesh and moved to the United States after serving as a pilot in the Bangladeshi Air Force. Rais first moved to New York City and then to Dallas to seek career opportunities in computer technology. Just weeks after 9/11, while working as a clerk in a friend's gas station, Rais was shot in the face by a white supremacist named Mark Stroman, as we have just heard. Stroman called himself the Arab Slayer. Rais thankfully survived the attack but lost the use of one eye and still carries dozens of shotgun pellets embedded in his face. Stroman confessed to shooting Bhuiyan and killing 2 other South Asian workers and was sentenced to death. And here is where the story of Rais Bhuiyan, a victim of a senseless and brutal crime, became a story of love triumphing over hate. Rais, as we have heard, mounted a nationwide effort to save Stroman and to have his sentence commuted to life in prison. Rais' pleas for mercy even reached the U.S. Supreme Court, but were ultimately unsuccessful, and Stroman was executed in 2011. In the hours before his execution, Rais spoke with Stroman. "I forgive you," Rais said, "and I do not hate you." Stroman responded, "Thank you from my heart. I love you, bro. You touched my heart. I would have never expected this." Rais replied, "You touched mine too." In the years since Stroman's execution, Rais has continued with his World Without Hate campaign to promote healing, compassion, and forgiveness. Rais' inspiring story has not only been turned into the book by Anand, who has shared his thoughts with us this evening, but is also being turned into a movie by Oscar-winning Catherine Bigelow. 1 year ago, the world lost the great Nelson Mandela, a man who, like Rais, was able to find forgiveness in his heart when almost any other person would have been consumed with bitterness and rage. But in his extraordinary life, Mandela learned an essential truth. No one is born hating another person because of the color of their skin or his background or his religion, he wrote in his autobiography. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love, for love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. In the aftermath of the worst moment of his life, Rais learned that lesson of love, and he has dedicated his life to sharing it with us. It is humbling to share the stage with him this evening. And his life reminds me of one of my favorite passages in the Old Testament. It comes from Micah, and it says, "What is required of us but to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God?" I can't imagine anyone who more clearly embodies that ethic and that spirit than Rais Bhuiyan. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Rais and to present him with the Muslim Public Affairs Foundation Human Relations Award to Rais Bhuiyan in recognition of your commitment to the Islamic value of mercy, boundless compassion, and courage to speak truth over fear. Congratulations.